All right, so we are live. There's going to be a slight delay in the. There's going to be a slight delay in the video because of the process that I'm going through OBS system, so that our deaf members is able to see closed captioning. So give me a real second. Okay, so our mitzvah reading today, last time we picked up, we ended at 463 of 613 mitzvah. And so we're going to be reading all of it's out of the Torah, which is the first 5 books of the Old Testament. And here is what each one of the mitzvah. So if you want to understand mitzvah, basically it's the rules or commandments that were expected of the Jewish culture and still is to this day, as best as it's listed. So I copied them all down so I could read from them. So here they are. 463. The court must judge the damages that are incurred by a goring ox. Basically, an ox that has decided to gore somebody or anything like that. Now, that's a basic concept kind of one. Exodus 21:28 for that. The courts must judge the damages incurred by an animal eating in another person's field. Exodus 22:4 for that. The court must judge the damages incurred by an open pit, regardless of what kind of pit it is. Okay. Exodus 21:33 for that. The court must judge the damages incurred by a fire. Exodus 22:5. Okay. Next one is not to steal money stealthily, meaning secretly. Okay, so not to be a scammer, not to try and scam people out of money or anything like that. Leviticus 19:11 for that. The court must implement punitive measures, or punishments in other words, against the thief. Exodus 21:37 for that. Each individual must ensure that his scales and weights are accurate. Leviticus 19:36. That is tied to basically the concept of scamming people, lying, being dishonest, deceiving. So it's kind of that concept. Exodus 21:37 for that. Next one. Each individual must ensure that his scales and weights are accurate. And I just read that one. I hate gnats. I hate gnats. They love the white screen, and right now that's my entire screen is all white from the notepad. So getting on to the next one, not to commit injustice with scales or weights. That's basically saying don't be dishonest. Don't use your scales and weights to gyp people out of money and things like that. Scales and weights were basically in the Old Testament where they used a kind of like a weighing system. Kind of like same principle as when you go to Walmart and they weigh your meat to judge how much you have to pay for it. This would be like kind of getting into the computer of the scale and changing it so that the person pays more is basically the concept. Leviticus 19:35 for that. Not to possess inaccurate weight scales, even if they are not for use. Deuteronomy 25:13. Next one, not to move a boundary marker to steal someone else's property. Deuteronomy 19:14. And that's in alignment with thou shalt not steal. Okay. Not to kidnap people. Simple. Exodus 20 verse 13 for that. Not to kidnap, not to take something that doesn't belong to you, not to covet. Not to rob openly. That's robbing somebody out in the open. Okay, Leviticus 19:13. Not to withhold wages or fail to repay a debt. So that's a heavy one for some people, especially people with bad debt. So it's saying don't hold wages that are due to someone who has worked. And the other part is saying you need to learn how to pay off your debt and get out of debt. Leviticus 19:13. And that honestly is a lot harder for some people than other people. Next one, not to covet or scheme to acquire another's possession. So basically, coveting is like not to want what doesn't belong to you, not to want it for yourself. This is different from, okay, I see them having a nice car, and I want to go out and buy a car just like it for myself. That's not coveting. Coveting is wanting their actual item for yourself. Okay? And this includes coveting their spouse or their boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. And scheme. So don't scheme, don't trick, in other words, to acquire or get another person's possessions, what belongs to them. That's Exodus 20, verse 14. Not to desire another person's possessions. Deuteronomy 5:18 for that one. Return the robbed object or its value. So either return the object if able, or return the value of the object. So in this case, it would be like if let's say you robbed somebody of something and you stole, I don't know, some sort of glass vase, and you had it in your house and it broke. And then later on you got convicted to return it, even though it was busted. You don't want to return something that's busted because that would just make more problems. So return the value of it. Leviticus 5:23. Not to ignore a lost object. So if something's lost, it's your duty to help it be found. Deuteronomy 22:3. Next one, return the lost object if able. If you're able to return it, return it. So these are Deuteronomy 22:3 for do not ignore a lost object. And the next one is Deuteronomy 22:1, return the lost object. So the next one is the court must implement laws against one who assaults another or damages another property. Exodus 21:18. And as we're learning this, you'll start realizing just how much this world actually does listen to the Bible commandments, even though they're blind to the fact that they're actually listening to God. Not to murder. Very simple one. Not to murder. And this includes, we have to tie into this what Jesus has to say about anger. If you have hatred for anyone in your heart, you are guilty of murder of the heart. And that's just as guilty as doing it in real life. Okay? That's Exodus 20, verse 13. Not to accept money. And by the way, guys, if there is a slowness to the video, it's because of the fact that I'm working through the OBS system and streaming through that in order to have closed captions for the deaf people that are friends of mine. Anyway, getting back, so not to murder, not to accept money to save a convicted murderer. So this would be along the lines of don't give false witnesses or anything like that, even if you're bribed to do it. Numbers 35:31. The court must send the actual murderer to a city of refuge. And in this case, it would be a prison, a place of refuge, because there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be hating the murderer, wanting to kill him, and things like that. Numbers 35:25 for that. Not to accept monetary restitution. That is money, basically monetary. Restitution is payment back, right? Instead, so do not accept money payment back instead of sending the actual murderer. So this is saying, we'll pay you $10,000 if you let my client who's a murderer off the hook, kind of thing. Again, bribery, lying, deceiving, stealing, all sorts of mess. So not to make a bribe, basically, for a murderer, or release him from a city of refuge, a place, so don't release him. Numbers 35:32. Not to kill the murderer before he stands trial. That means he has to have a fair trial. Numbers 35:12 for that. To save someone, next one, to save someone being pursued, even by taking the life of the pursuer. Okay, so the essence in this is you have to get very specific. The Bible says, thou shalt not kill. You shall not take a life. If you're defending a life, right? If you're defending a life, that's defending one life against another life. So it's kind of like really, really delicate balancing act kind of thing. So this would be an example of like the cop who shoots a person who has a gun and the person who has the gun is pointing the gun at another person. It's either you let that person who has a gun shoot the person who doesn't, or you shoot the person who does. So it's the whole premise is that you're doing it out of protection versus you're doing it out of anger, hate, and I just want to take you out of this world. So that's the whole premise and idea behind it. So having to kill in defense is completely different from having to kill, or I should say wanting to kill, out of bad intentions or things. So example, a cop defending someone and being forced to fire on someone and that person dying because they were shot at, biblically okay. Someone who, for example, Cain killing Abel because he was jealous, bad. Also, David in the Old Testament killing the husband of the woman that he wanted to be with, just because he wanted to be with her, just because he was coveting her, right? Bad. Deuteronomy 25:12 for that. Not to pity the pursuer. So not to pity, not to have pity on the person who's chasing. And so this is tied to the one before. So the pursuer would be the one trying to track down and kill the other person. Okay. So not to have pity on the person. Okay. Not to have any kind of pity or remorse in that case for that person. In other words, don't feel bad that you're defending the victim. Very simple. Numbers 35:12. Not to stand idly by if someone's life is in danger. Leviticus 19:16. So the part of my Shabbat learning, and by the way, Shabbat simply means Sabbath, which simply means Holy Sunday kind of deal. Part of it is learning that it's okay to break a Sabbath rule if it's in the purpose of saving someone's life. You are able to save someone's life and break a rule in the process. Okay. That's like basically you're allowed to do that. You're allowed to break the Shabbat rules if it means you're saving somebody's life or something of that sort. Okay. Leviticus 19:16. Designate refuge cities and prepare routes of access. This would be directly related, I think, to the people who are trying to kill somebody. So when they were saying send the person to a refuge, the idea would be to designate specific cities or places for these places of imprisonment. So today that would be related, city of refuges for pursuers would be translated to being prisons. Okay, so having specific areas for prisons and specific routes of access. So for example, what is that? I forget. There's that one famous prison, I forget its name, Alcatraz, there we go. And it was they specifically chose to put it on an island because it was surrounded by water. It was harder to escape from. And I believe that they only had one actual bridge or way of route towards it. So they were able to watch and monitor it very easily. That is Deuteronomy 19:3. When a murdered person, somebody who's been murdered, is found in open country, and the murderer, or the murder, not murderer, murder, is unsolved, break the neck of a calf by the river valley. So this was one of the rules. So you would actually have to go and kill a calf, which is a small cow, okay, by the river valley if the case was unsolved. Okay, so basically blood, the essence there's blood being spilled as payment, which we later learned the Lord, Yahshua, came and became that final sacrifice. So it's the same principle. This is why every time you committed a sin, you had to do a sin offering, or you had to do like some sort of grain offering or this offering. And usually when it came to sin, blood was one of the requirements that you had to spill. Deuteronomy 21:4. So the next four are going to be out of Deuteronomy 21 and 22. We just read one of them. The second one is not to work that river valley or plant there. So the river valley where you kill that calf, right? Don't work that valley to produce crops or anything, and don't plant anything there. I guess the principle of it today would be kind of like when you're going down roads and you see those little wreaths and stuff in memorial to people that have been hit by cars and stuff. So that would be kind of like the same principle. Next one, not to allow pitfalls and obstacles to remain on your property. So there's a very literal description here of an actual hole in the ground, actual things that can make people trip and hurt themselves. Okay, you're going to want to, on your property, you're going to want to make it as clear as possible so that people can stay safe. But there is, I think, a spiritual aspect to this as well, because the Bible connects this with another verse in that aspect of saying, don't put a stumbling block before your brother. And that's actually talking about a spiritual stumbling block. Now, many people actually do that online. They don't actually know it. And I'll share that with you right quick. People that go on TikTok and Instagram and put themselves in sexy outfits and dance and shake their bodies, they are not realizing that they're sinning not only to themselves to make themselves a lustful object, but they're actually trying to endorse other people to look at them as lustful objects. And it's very negative, for sure. And there's Bible verses all about it. And we'll get into that at a later time, but I just wanted to connect those two for you. That's connected to the idea of lewdness, which is you're trying to make yourself some sort of idol or like lustful image, or to be looked at anything other than a valued human being. So in the Bible it says, I know I just read this not too long ago, and I think it was in Thessalonians or Timothy, where it said, women ought to dress in such a way as to bring honor and glory in how they dress, with dignity and respect and self-respect. And the way you dress with that, if you're dressing in an appropriate way, you see what it does to men. It makes them just want to rape you, want to have sex with you, want to misuse your body and everything like that. So be very mindful of how you're dressing and what that's bringing. So like examples would be like you're on Facebook group and you see for dating or something, and you see constant women going, I want a husband, but then they're in this like skimpy outfit, right? And the thought would be, think about what kind of men you're bringing to yourself. So I'm going to say it this way. If you want to be a wife, present yourself as a wife would, in the way you dress, in the way you present yourself. Okay, don't present yourself as a piece of meat, in other words. And if you want to be seen as a one-time enjoyment, then don't be looking for a husband, because husbands don't look at their women in that way. As far as what I mean, let me correct my words. What I mean is that a husband values your heart and mind more than he values your body. He realizes your body is going to fade away, it's going to get older, and at some point you're going to die. He would rather spend time getting to know you as a person, understanding who you are, understanding your concepts of your mind, understanding what makes you happy, what makes you sad, what things you like, what things you don't like, things like that. So he's going to discover you, in other words. Now, keep in mind that the moment you get married, you have free reign to sexually enjoy each other, of a husband and wife. Okay, that is biblical. Okay, outside of marriage, that's where Satan takes the things of God. What he likes to do, he takes the things of God and he brings them outside of the boundaries that God has set. So, example, sex inside of marriage. Satan grabs it, brings it out of marriage to dilute it, twist it, and turn it into some fornication and nasty stuff. Okay, but inside of marriage, inside of the boundaries, God has said, "Hey, these are things that I love, and you can enjoy them." Okay. Next one. Make a guardrail around flat roofs. So this would be like make your rooftop safe. Okay. Make things that you're dealing with very safe. That way people don't fall and hurt themselves. That is Deuteronomy 22:8. So here comes another one. And this also has a double meaning. Okay, so listen to this. Leviticus 19:14. Not to put a stumbling block before the blind. Not literal, there's a literal meaning to that. Like, don't go and try to trip up somebody who's actually blind. Okay? But there's also a literal as well as a metaphorical. And metaphorical is, again, don't put something in somebody's way if they're blind to it. Like, for example, if you know that it's sinful to lie, don't be trying to lead other people who don't know it's sinful to lie to go down the road of lying. You know what I mean? Don't be trying to lead them down the wrong path, in other words. Leviticus 19:14. Help another remove the load from a beast that can no longer carry it. So the idea, work horses, work cows, animals to plow the fields and stuff. This would be help somebody. If someone needs help, help them. Simple. Exodus 23:5. They actually have a parable in the Bible of many people walking past someone on the road, and then there's a Samaritan that comes up, the Good Samaritan, and they help somebody out, and they take them to a hotel or a motel and pay for their payment and everything. Exodus 23:5. Next one, help others load their beasts. So basically help people with manual labor if you're able to do it. If someone's having trouble carrying a bag of groceries, well, help them. Ask them if they need help. Say, hey, do you need help with that? Offer to help. Be the helper. Be the hands of God. Okay? Deuteronomy 22:4 for that and the next one. Not to leave fallen beasts distraught with their burdens, but help to load or unload. So a fallen beast would be an animal that is getting too old or too sick or whatever to be able to perform their duties as they should. Okay? And you're supposed to help that animal by either loading or unloading their issue, I guess it were. Next one, buy and sell according to Torah law. What is Torah law? First 5 books of the Bible. The Torah law is actually what we're reading right now. Okay. Leviticus 25:14. So according to the law, the Torah, the Old Testament, the first 5 books of the Old Testament, you are to buy and sell accordance with it. One of the rules, you can't buy and sell on Shabbat. That is one of the rules in the mitzvah. So for me, I understand that Shabbat or Sabbath day is Friday night at sunset to Saturday at sunset. Okay? That's when the original Sunday is. The 7th day, not the first day. Okay? And I hate gnats. Oh. Woo-hoo-hoo. Sorry guys, it got loud there for a second. Oh, I hate that. That's what I hate about this building of 200 apartments. They have these constant little fruit flies known as gnats, and they get on my nerves. Anyway, getting back to what I was saying. So, from Friday till Saturday at sunset, biblically, you're not allowed to buy or sell. I forgot to have my drink with me over here because I get so I'm not going to be doing too much more of these for today. I'll continue it tomorrow and the next day till we're done. Now we're at 500, so we have 613. So we're almost there. So do no buying or selling. This is why in the Bible, Yahshua, known as Jesus, flipped over the money tables in the temple. Because they were doing something improper. They were turning God's house, God's temple, into a den of robbers. By the way, you're the temple of God. I'm going to connect something here for you. You are the temple of God. So every time you have sex or masturbate, you are violating the temple of the Holy Spirit, because the Holy Spirit lives within you. But God does give you grace to cover that area. He's paid for your sins, just so you know. So nowadays, it's not sins that send people to hell, it's unbelief. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Not to overcharge or underpay for an article. I actually had this happen a couple times. People actually overpaid me money. And I was like, no, hey, you got this wrong. Okay. And I corrected it. You're not supposed to allow overcharging or overpaying, or underpaying for that matter. Okay. Leviticus 25:14. Not to insult or harm anybody with words. This is so many places in the Bible where it says your tongue can be used for healing or for killing. Okay, it can be used for life or death, in other words. I'm going to connect the verse in the Bible, and I might kind of get the concept of the Bible and where and what the messages are, but I don't always remember where it's at. So you're going to have to forgive me if I can't recite the actual location. But in the Bible, it says, let nothing corrupt come out of your mouth, except for what is good for the encouraging of other people, basically, in layman's terms. And when I realized that basically you're not supposed to let anything come out of your mouth that is not for helping other people, then it gave a whole new understanding to how I use my words. Now notice, keep this in mind, correcting somebody, although it very much sounds many times like you're just trying to hurt them or be harsh with them and stuff like that, the idea is that you're actually trying to help them. I'll give you an example. Yahshua, Jesus, told the Pharisees, you are dirty. Now, that alone could be taken as I'm trying to insult you, right? However, he didn't just leave it at that. Every time that he gives something to warn somebody of something, he says, no, here's how you do it the right way. So after that, he told him, no, a cup, you have to clean the inside of the cup first, then the outside will be clean. But you're cleaning the outside and the inside's dirty. So he's trying to instruct them in what is the proper way of doing things. And that is the difference between using your words for good and words for bad, and how even though sometimes words may sound like they're for bad, it's the motive behind it. It's the reasoning. So for me, I'm learning when something pops in the... Stupid. Oh, I hate those things. I'm going to start keeping a fly swatter with me. Because they're drawn to this white screen on my laptop. Anyway, so as I was saying, trying to remember, train of thought. You can use your words for good and bad. You can use it for life and death. How do you choose to use it? If you choose to use it for growth, correcting, admonishing, lifting up, rebuking, even rebuking. If you're rebuking, notice many times when he rebuked something in the Bible, it was always rebuking the action. I rebuke the spirit that's in you, or I rebuke the action that you're doing, versus I rebuke you. He never rejected people, but he always addressed the actions. Okay, so that's the concept. So do not insult or harm anybody with your words. Leviticus 25:17. Now there is New Testament areas that say roughly that same thing. Okay, not to cheat a sincere convert monetarily. So basically, let's break it down. Not to cheat or lie or cheat or scam somebody. The person they're talking about is a sincere convert. A convert is someone who was one faith and now they have decided to be a different faith. Okay, so a convert would be someone who's one, like I was Jewish before and now I'm Christian. I'm not Jewish, by the way, but I'm using that as an example. So a convert is jumping from one faith to a different faith. You've converted, in other words. So it's saying don't insult or harm, but that's the next one. So this one says do not cheat, do not lie, scam, take advantage of, misuse a person who has converted to a different faith. In the essence of the last word here, monetarily, that means money-wise. Okay, that's Exodus 22:20. Next one, not to insult or harm a sincere convert with your words. Again, I'll say it. Not to insult or harm a sincere convert with your words. Okay? Very interesting as we learn this. That's also Exodus 22:20. a Hebrew slave shall be released after 6 years. So we read this before, where basically every 7 years there would be a renewal. And basically every 7 years, anybody that was a slave to anybody else was set free on that 7th year, because that 7th year was a year of holiness, basically, kind of thing. Exodus 21:2 for that, for the area. Not to sell him as a slave is sold. So not to sell the free person as though a slave is to be sold. Leviticus 25:42 for that. Not to work the slave oppressively. So it's not saying not to work the slave. Okay. Now I know with many people they're going to be looking at this word slave and taking it offensively. So think of it this way. The word slave in the Old Testament is often referred to in the sense of a maid or a maiden. Okay. They were under authority of their master, but they were looked at more like a maid or a maiden to a helper and a sister, things like that. Okay. So you could take this into the workforce, for example. Not to work a slave or a worker, right? Oppressively, meaning wrongfully. Okay. Leviticus 25:43. Not to allow a foreigner to work the slave oppressively. So this is not just you doing it, but not allowing others to work a slave oppressively. Ooh, I don't like those things. Yeah, I know. That scared you. I know, kitty cat. That scared you. Okay. Yeah. Don't blame me. Blame the gnat, you goofball. Okay. Next one. We are going to stop at 5:10 for today. So we're at 5:08 right now. Okay. Not to have the kinsman's slave do menial slave labor. So this would be like kinsmen would be your brothers or sisters, and things like basically your family members, relatives, things like that. So not to have the slaves of your family members do very menial, meaning worthless, jobs, like scrubbing the toilet, or different things like that. Leviticus 25:39. Next one. So we got two more, then we're gonna be finished. Okay. Give the slave gifts when he goes free. So supposedly I don't know what these slave gifts are, but basically there's gifts that were given to the slaves, the workers in the Old Testament, the slaves in the Old Testament, every 7 years when they would be set free. Okay. Deuteronomy 15:14. Okay. And that's for that one. So give slaves. And 5:10, not to send the freed slave away empty-handed. So not to send the free slave away empty-handed. Deuteronomy 15:13. So ladies and gentlemen, that is the live for today. Yeah, the gnats are bad this year. I'm just seeing the comments, by the way. Thank you, Sister Christina Burgos, for joining. The gnats are horrible. And it doesn't help that half the people in this building are just foul in the way that they're living. So thank you, Sister Christina, for joining. Thank you for that. We are done with the live, so I'm going to go ahead and end this live. You all have a blessed day, and we will try to finish this up within the next 1 or 2 videos.